That's just Jersey, man. We're a different breed. Place. Who doesn't want to win in Jersey?
And the Scarlet Knights did not have a national champion before tonight, and it's RU times 2.
What's up, everybody? John Forrester here. Breakdown at the Barn. We are back, episode 18. I'm here with, as always, the greatest mind in wrestling, Eric Winnuck. How you making out, Eric? You excited to be back? How's the off season going for you?
No, it's been good, man. Been doing a lot of spring wrestling with the boy. When the off season seems to be the busy season in the spring, summer months, we're at the shore, some club duel stuff with Yale Street, summer tournaments. But now we're heading into August, a little football, and now to start time talking about November, which means what? College wrestling. So time to get back to business.
College wrestling is coming up. I see you got your Seabass NIL shirt from Rutgers. Breakdown NIL deals being signed left and right. Breakdown in the Barn. We just got an NIL deal signed. Our first sponsor coming to you, Roll Junkie Grappling Gear. I got the Mad Monkey on my shirt today. Best wrestling jiu-jitsu gear out there. Go to rolljunkie.com. Type in the promo code BARN15. You get 15% off. Get at that. All the wrestlers, get the Roll Junkie on, support the program. Great gear. I wore it for my fights. I wear it to jiu-jitsu. I wear it to wrestling now. Best gear you're going to get.
Love it, man. Love it. Good stuff.
Nice. So what do we got on the docket today? Rutgers, big news came out last week. Anthony Ashnault to the New York Regional Training Center. Coaching search is underway. We're actually going to have Scott Goodale on next episode to chat about that, get some insights. What are your thoughts on that, Eric?
Yeah, well, to me, it's funny when you talk about Ashnault, because I'm not going to say it's the end of an era, because I'm hoping it comes back. And, once Anthony gets through his senior career, we can welcome back to the banks. But right now, he obviously wants to concentrate full bore on wrestling. Got to respect him. You only get a short period of window to do this. So, my thoughts are the end of an era in the sense that the Scott Goodale trajectory, once obviously he brought in some high-level guys early in his career, but ever since he brought in Ashnault to the program, just the program, Scott and Anthony, it's almost like they've been tied to the hip all the way to the last coaching the last couple of years. So to me, it's a bittersweet moment. I'm happy for Anthony because he's going to get that chance to really, coming over some injuries he faced a couple of years, really chase his dream. But it's going to be interesting to see who's going to fill that spot, because you had 2 national champions on the coaching staff, and that definitely leaves a hole. So I'm curious to see what Scott's going to do here. I'm sure he'll hit a home run for us, but yeah, it's definitely a loss to the program, but hopefully a positive for Anthony.
Yeah, I agree. Good luck, Ashnault. Once a night, always a night. He texted that, mentioned that back on the Instagram. Always a night. His heart's still at Rutgers, but you want to be an Olympic champion. You got to make sacrifices, and you got to do what's good for you. You got to be a little selfish, and you got to go for it. And that's that's probably his mindset. And he came to Rutgers, won that national title, and good for him. I think he's going to do great things. And like you said, maybe there'll be a boomerang effect coming back, right?
Yeah, well, think about it. He's going to have Jordan Oliver to work with. He's going to have Kendall Cross as a coach, and you can't do much better than that. So you can't fault the man. Obviously, we're very pro Scarlet Knights Wrestling Club, but I think, my thought is he wants to get some new looks. I think he's close with Jordan, so they get to bang heads. I'm trying to think in terms of weight classes, because they're very close in terms of the senior circuit where they're going to be going. So he's definitely going to be giving it one last shot. So we give him thumbs up. We're behind him. We know Seabass is really starting to build on the freestyle acumen. He's been having a really good kind of, push on his senior career. It's been going really, really well working with Coach Buxton. So hopefully we could have 2 Scarlet Knights making a push on the international scene here.
Yeah, that'd be great. Now, the night schedule is not out yet, but we just got today the Penn schedule dropped. We've been talking, we had our Penn's correspondent on, Josh Baylor, and he's been pushing last year, getting that, Penn Rutgers match on the books.
Flashback to November 2001.
When is Rutgers going to put UPenn on the schedule, on the calendar? When's this match going to happen? We're chomping at the bit for it, and we think you're ducking us.
I got no problem. I'm all about wrestling the matches. I'm all about going after the best anytime, anywhere, any place. So let's bring it on.
Listen, we answered this question before, and I was a little salty at Roger Reina for, I know in the 90s, we had a bunch of tough no names, and we wanted to go down and face the big red and blue machine. I know the Silver Fox was after it. Roger Reina, he did not want, Brandon Slay going up against Rod Van Ness, Hot Rod, before the EIWA finals. He knows how athletic that guy is and how he's a little nuts too, man, and tough. He wanted to wait to the EIWA finals for that matchup. I know, he didn't want Mark Piotrowski going against Tom Wysocki before the EIWA semifinals. Tom Wysocki could have took him out of that national bid, and he knew Tom Wysocki. Not only that, this he's responsible for the legacy of the Piotrowski athletics for generations to come now. Roger Reina saw that coming, and Roger Reina did not want the Jefferson Army coming down the turnpike to see Jim McLean and Tom Tanis go out there. So I was a little salty at him. Time heals old wounds. 20 years, 25 years went by. Let me tell you, you said, the thing I do know about Roger Reina, he's a competitor. He went out, he's getting the teams in. He will be sending out the top teams there. I say, let's do it. Let's get it done. Let's get Goodale, Goodale, make it happen, man. I'm going to take the Paco over. I'm going to go to the inn at Penn, get fired up before the match. I'll be there. I'll be ready to go. I know Winnock's going to be there. We got it. December 4th, Penn Rutgers at the Rock, the Prudential Center up there in Newark. That was a great event. I was there last year. Penn, they're building, they're getting everybody on their team, I think, is ranked, and I think that's going to be a good matchup. What do you think about that one, Eric?
Well, it's funny you talk about Penn and being a good matchup, because we talked about this a couple of years ago, not that long ago, when you talk about the EIWA, especially the Ivies. You're talking about Cornell, and then Princeton started making a push, and obviously they built a really nice program. And I'm not going to say that UPenn was kind of a second thought, but they weren't at that level. And what they pulled off of the last couple of years, and definitely you got to point to that RTC that they're building. And even before they brought in Jordan Burroughs, just what they were building as a program. There's a lot of support there. Obviously, John, I have a couple of connections, people in that program, and they've been building it. So to me, this is going to be a tight matchup. And, we can go over a couple of quick hits in this lineup, but, a couple of years ago, you're thinking, all right, good solid match for RU to get them ready. This is a dual meet where if you go down the lineup, we could easily lose by 3 or 4 matches. We bring our A game. I think we can do the job, but this is going to be one hell of a shot for us to show the national scene where we're at this year, because UPenn is no joke. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're coming. I was at that Penn State Penn match last year, and you saw something there, right? I mean, they had guys that were banging heads with the Penn State guys, and they lost the match, but they battled, and you could see a program on the rise. That regional training center, there's a lot of pop there. Brandon Slay in there, David McFadden, Joey McKenna, Jordan Burroughs, of course. I mean, lots of talent in that room, and things feeding off of that. So I think this is going to be a banger matchup. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to go up to the Prudential Center, and we'll see what we do. I think that's going to be a good early test for the Knights.
Well, what I'm hoping, and I'm pretty confident that UPenn's going to come to wrestle, because it was a little disappointing. Obviously, I couldn't make it last year. I was really disappointed about it. But after the fact, I'm like, you know what? I didn't miss anything, because North Carolina set half the lineup. I think UPenn's going to come to wrestle, so I'm going to be excited to be there. Do you mind? Let's go through a one or quick 2 matchups. I think 133. Obviously, we're going to have a new look at Rutgers this year at 133. It's either going to be Howman or the newcomer Silva. So 2 new names. I think that's who you're going to see. I don't want to get too much into the lineup for today's episode, but obviously he's going to have a tough one at 133. I think that's a key matchup.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to be a tough matchup. They're very solid across the board. 57, Zamp. Zamp, I think, is ranked 10th in the early polls. That's going to be a big test for, either Kennard or Clark to go against. They got a good lineup there. I think they got guys that are all ranked between 10th and 20th. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think what we'll do, John, is once it gets closer, we know once the lineup shake out, maybe we'll do a more detailed one. It's gonna be fun to see Sammy maybe at 49 this year. 41 is going to be open, whether or not it's going to be CJ or Ferranti from UPenn. So when we get closer, we'll go through the lineup in a little more detail, but I'm excited about it. I think it's a good way to come out of the gate.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of the Baylors, I mean, we talked, Josh Baylor was on the show. Jeremy Baylor just produced a good documentary. I don't know if you've seen it on A&E, Kurt Angle story. Very well done. Went through his life. Were you able to catch that?
Yeah, I caught bits and pieces of it. I got to watch it in full. The little I saw, and I know they went into a little bit of a piece about what he was dealing with his wife and just a lot of his personal stuff. And they really opened it. There's been Kurt Angle documentaries before, but I'm getting the feeling that this one was a little bit more kind of hitting a little bit more home. I'll let you speak more of it. I know I want to catch it from beginning to end, but right off the bat, I think the little I saw, really just a superior job in terms of really getting to the man and what he went through. And there's a lot about him I didn't even realize and what he was dealing with on his personal side. So obviously we know all about, his Olympic career and his career in the WWE, and just the personality and the character that he brought, but you really got to see a little bit more about the man. I thought it was like I said, I only saw about 20-30 minutes of it, but what I saw was tremendous. Your thoughts?
No, very good. I mean, it was well done. It was a good mix of, college wrestling and Olympic wrestling was probably the first hour of it. Then it got into the WWE career and what he was battling there and everything. Great comeback story. I didn't know a lot about it. I mean, he had a broken neck going into the Olympic trials, still made the Olympic team. And he, amazing story. And I think, kudos to Jeremy Baylor. Great story about that comeback story. Probably a good person to do that too, because I'll tell you, Jeremy Baylor, New Jersey state champion. He wrestled at Penn as well. Great wrestler. I'll tell you, going back 1994, Buena Regional High School and Jefferson High School in the state finals. Jeremy Baylor, returning state champion. He goes up against Bruce Hole, 500 record. And I'll tell you what, Bruce Hole took him down twice in a near side cradle. I'm not a ref. I can't comment on it, but I'll just say most people in the gym said Jeremy Baylor was pinned. But the guy came back, man. The guy came back, won the match, and Jefferson got that sectional title. And this was after, I'll tell you what, this was after Paul Castellini just totally dismantled Tom Tanis. Tom Tanis, fourth in the NCAA, beat Damian Horn. I think the match was like 13-2 or something. Castellini just destroyed him. So momentum was going one way. Then Bruce Hall goes and packs up Jeremy Baylor twice, and Jeremy Baylor came back. Jefferson ended up winning it. I think all I remember is Tom Tanis, I think, had Jeremy Baylor on his back after the match, and Jeremy had the number one up, but he came back. He won that match. So good guy to do that comeback story. Check it out. It's on A&E. It's on demand. So check that out on demand. Good episode. Good flick there. 2 hours. You'll get pumped up.
Good stuff, man. And let me tell you something. Castellini was always a tough out. Really good hard-nosed wrestler. Going back in the Buena history, going back to some of the pre-Goodell Rutgers history too, there with a couple of names. So good stuff.
Yeah, him and Tanis were back and forth that year at Rutgers too. They, three close matches. I think Paul won the second one. Tanis won the first one, very controversial, and then Tanis won, later in the year, took the spot. But they were back and forth battling. Good, two good Rutgers wrestlers there. They had some great wins back in the day at the Banks.
Good stuff. And speaking, let's keep it within the Pennsylvania kind of theme here. We're going to go to a Penn State wrestler, a former Penn State wrestler, I should say, and Bo Nickal, get a little MMA talk. And obviously, Bo Nickal, one of the more kind of prolific wrestlers we've seen over the last 10, 15 years, and a big name that's making his he made his pro debut in the MMA, but this was his first shot at getting looked by the UFC, obviously the Dana White series, which you and I always like to watch. And tell me about what you saw last night. The rear naked chokehold did what we expected, But why don't you just give me a little background in terms of Bo as an MMA fighter and what your thoughts are going forward and your reaction to last night?
Yeah, so first off, just for you guys that don't understand how the ranks work, it's the Dana White Contender Series. So basically, it's to get into the UFC. You go in there, you have a good performance, and then Dana White comes out. And sometimes, there's usually 5 fights. You might give 1 contract, might give like 3 contracts to the UFC. So, that's kind of the show it was on. It was a second pro fight. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get it wrong. There's things behind the scene there. Bo Nickal's not like these other guys on that show. There's a deal behind the scenes. Bo Nickal is highly, highly recruited. He got deals, could get signed big deals with Bellator, with these ONE FC, with these other promotions. So he's in the UFC. It's just kind of going through the motions there. As long as he doesn't really fall flat in his face, he's in the UFC. But, look dominant, just went out there again, level of competition. Opponent was 3-0, no slouch, but not one of the top guys in the UFC, but took him a minute, dominated, had him in a front guillotine, had him in a couple submissions. I'll give the guy credit, guy was able to get out, and then real naked choke and done. So Bo Nickal, he has star power. I mean, I think that he could be. Yeah, that's what he says. He wants to be the number 1 pound for pound fighter and the greatest of all time. When you look at what's needed in MMA, you need good wrestling first and foremost. We know Bo Nickal is top notch there. You need good submissions. This guy went with Gordon Ryan, the number 1 grappler in the world. Gave him a fight. He's been in a lot of these top jiu-jitsu tournaments. He has that. First fight, he was out there, knocked the guy out in 30 seconds. He has the hands. So he has those 3 things. The thing that it's going to come down to with Bo Nickal is, does he have the chin? When he gets popped, is he going to be able to take that punch? Because guys are going to be able to stand up with them and get that punch. But I'll tell you what, a lot of upside with this guy. I'm excited to see him come along. What they did was they didn't say you're going to be in the UFC in your next fight. They said they want him back
next week.
On the UFC Contender Series for another fight. They call it a developmental contract. So I think that's the right move. You don't want to throw him to the wolves right away. You want him to continue to get better, progress that level of competition. MMA, you get a bad knockout right away. You don't want to do that. So I definitely see high things for him. I'm excited to see him progress. I think he's, very, very high level. He has the skills. We know he has the work ethic, and we know he has the mentality. So, I'm excited to see what he does.
Yeah, he's probably one of the bigger wrestling names to come into UFC so quickly. Obviously, Cormier, a couple of those, obviously Ben Askren. But to what you said earlier, you don't want to go in there right away with all the hype and all the name and not show yourself. It's a bad example. I'll throw Pico out there in his first fight, and obviously he was highly favored. There was a lot of buildup, skipped on a collegiate career. Everyone expected this kid to be, like Spencer Lee, okay, maybe a little bit of exaggeration there, but he comes out and he didn't show in that first fight. So I think now, granted, Bo Nickal's older, he's more seasoned, he's stronger, he's not an 18-year-old kid coming out of high school. But again, anything can happen when you come in. So I like the idea that taking it slow, he's not necessarily fighting the most high prolific fighters right now. I think you were spot on. Him and Dana White, it's obvious that there was almost like a little tongue in cheek at the end there about, let's see him fight one more time. What more can you say? He'll probably get another knockout or choke out in his next series, get him in, and we'll see what's going to happen there. But to your point, taking that shot, UFC's full of men. And when I talk about men, I'm talking about badass men, and he's going to have to deal with adversity. Every fight's not going to be a 30-second, I get into my double, just choke you out and call it a day. But what Bo Nickal brings, not just he's got good hand speed for a wrestler, but he's and they mentioned this yesterday in the fight. When you see Bo Nickal, he's obviously a big, strong kid, a former collegiate wrestler, but you don't think of him as super big and strong, as super ripped. from what they say, this kid looks 10 times as stronger as he appears. I remember meeting him kind of in the Nationals a couple of years ago and standing next to him. And it sounds silly and cliche, but he looks bigger in person than he does on TV. So I'm really excited for Bo Nickal. I would have liked to have seen him in the international circuit, in the senior circuit, but obviously with David Taylor there and a couple of top wrestlers, I think he thought this was his best chance at a career. So yeah, looking forward to it. But last night was what we expected. Double leg, did a nice job spinning around, reverse chokehold, 60 seconds called a day, and we'll see him at the next series.
Yeah, exactly. And one more thing you brought up, right? So you talk about the top tier wrestlers that go into MMA, and there's a set there. There's Cormier, there's Askren, there's Henry Cejudo, right?
Cejudo, yeah,
those guys all went after their international career, more in their 30s, right? Then you mentioned another name, Pico. Pico went 19 years old, 20 years old. I think Bo is going in at the optimal time to have an amazing career, having that college wrestling behind him. So he grew, he learned, he's a man now, so he's going in at probably the optimal time where he can now learn that, he learned he's a much better wrestler now than he was when he was 19 years old. So he developed those wrestling skills, and now he's moving into these other areas. So I think he's entering into the sport at the right time, and we're going to see how he goes. Like I said, I think my thing, the question for him is his chin. When he gets hit, if he has a solid chin, I think he's going to be one of the top guys. I'm excited to watch him go.
Good stuff. So close out the show, just kind of getting back in the action here before we start doing lineups the next couple of weeks. Now, obviously, we're going to have a big guest next week, but why don't we just really quickly touch on the dual championship series? Because I know there's been some chatter about bringing that back. Obviously, a couple of years ago, they introduced it. We had a really good match with Lehigh. There's some exciting stuff, but then obviously some injuries, some of the top teams kind of, shied away from it, went away. Your thoughts on whether or not you come back, and just your thoughts in general, this concept of having a dual championship to kind of go with the national championship, at the individual level.
I think it should. And I think if they do it right, this is where wrestling trips over themselves. If they do this right, this thing could be huge. I think, our friend Donnie DeFilippis, one of the top minds in wrestling, he posted something. They used to do this, and they did the dual championship series a few years back. Shane Sparks tweeted about a dual tournament, which they used to do back in the day. And, Donnie DeFilippis said they did it back in the day and it didn't work. Well, it didn't work because they didn't do it the right way, right? They had 16 teams or so fly out to a place for one weekend and wrestle a tournament. Now, target audience for wrestling is people like me and you, Winnock, right? We got busy jobs. We got kids. We're running all over the place. You can't do it that way. There's no build up to the matches. There's no, who's taking on who. Look at the NCAA basketball tournament, spread out over a 2-week period. There's always some Cinderella story. The Peacocks last year, Jersey City, they went for a run. Everyone was a fan of them. You didn't even know who they were, but you just saw, you saw them being whatever they were, 14th seed, doing these big upsets. People loved it. Wrestling could do this. Now, the downside is when they say some coaches don't want to do it, we're talking about a couple coaches, right? We're talking about Cale Sanderson. We're talking about Tom Brands, right? Maybe John Smith. We're talking about the top tier. I agree. Penn State shouldn't, I'll side with Penn State here. They shouldn't have to wrestle 5 matches to show they're the national champs. We know Penn State is one of the top 2 teams in the country. So here's my thought, Winnock. You spread this out over 2 weeks, right? Top 2 seeds, they get buys to the semifinals, right? So they only have to wrestle 2 matches to win it. Give the 3rd seed a bye to the quarters, right? So that's 3 teams. Then you have 4 somewhat regional tournaments to get these other 3 teams in there, because you're going to have 6 now instead of 8, because you got the buys into that. We'll call it the Savage 6, right? So you do like 4 or 3 4-man brackets, figure an East Coast one. Imagine if you had Rutgers, Princeton, Penn, and Lehigh going a 4-man bracket to make that tournament. Would be huge. So I think you do it that way. You know, some teams, the lower seeded teams, they got to win 5 matches. You spread that out over 2 weeks. I think that would be very huge. I think we're in a different world now, a lot more podcasts out there, a lot of TV deals, Big Ten Network, Flow. You have this on ESPN, you have this on a lot of different, different channels. I think that would just blow up. I think you're going to have some big stories there. Crazy things happen in dual meets. You're always going to have a 12th seed that's going to make it to the semifinals or something like that's going to happen. I think it'd be big for wrestling.
Yeah, well, I'll play devil's advocate on a couple of things, John. Obviously you and I would love the idea of a dual meet where we're under the Scott Goodell blanket where we take dual meet seriously. We pack the house. You're talking about 4,000 or 5,000 people at, what is now Jersey Mike's, what we call the rack. It's exciting for us. Okay. Here's the problem. Okay. When are you going to do these 5-6 matches? I know you're saying it's 2 weeks, but once you hit February, you've got your conference tournaments. You're getting ready to get seeded for the national tournament. Okay. I think, if you really want to seriously consider this, and my push has been that, you make wrestling a second semester sport, you push the national championship tournament out to April. Okay. I don't know the logistics behind it. I'm kind of talking out of my rear end a little bit with this, but I think if you're going to do it, you've got to do that. Maybe have the duels a little bit later in the winter. The problem is when you talk about the NCAA basketball tournament, that is what, as a young kid, what you want to be when you go play college basketball, at least before you had the one and done, you were playing to win a national tournament. Okay. There was no individual skills conference or competition. Same thing with the NCAA football schedule. Okay. You were playing to be in a BCS bowl or now kind of that top 4. And I know they're talking about expanding to 6 or 8. Your dream is to be out there in that national, championship game with your team to play it out. Wrestling, whether we like it or not, okay, it's not a dirty secret. It's well known. This is an individual sport, okay, and you're preparing to win a national title as an individual or to become an All-American, okay, and anything that's going to deter from that is going to be second nature, okay? We see it in the bowl series with college football, what's happening now, okay? Unless you're playing in that, and even if you're playing in a BCS bowl, let's say Alabama or Ohio State don't get in the national championship, okay? And they're playing even at a Rose Bowl. If you're set to make $10+ million, you're going to play in that bowl game or you're going to sit out and protect your draft status, okay? In this case, if you've got a serious opportunity to be top 4 national champion, do you want to risk pulling an ACL, okay, or suffering a shoulder injury in a dual meet season that many people, maybe not you and I, are going to say is not that really that serious when you consider your goal is to be a national championship? And you're talking about the Kales, you're talking about the Brands, you're talking about the John Smiths, okay? Those guys are looking to win national titles in the tournament with their individual wrestlers. And we saw it, John. I mean, Big Tens, you got guys literally sitting out the semifinals of a Big Ten championship. We got to solve that problem first, okay? If you're not willing to wrestle in the Big Ten championship, how are you going to convince these guys to do a dual meet season? So I just put that out there, John. Reaction.
Listen, Eric, you can't let the inmates run the asylum. You need to have rules for that. You talk about, sitting out at the Big Ten championship. There needs to be consequences for that. You're going to get a lower seed, right? You can't bump them a 1 seed to a 16 seed, but you could have bumped a 1 seed to the 3 seed, and that's going to make some differences for people sitting out. And if you're okay with that, then good for you, right? It should count as a loss on your record. If you're okay with that, then good for you. You will see that just completely go away. With this tournament, same thing. What you'll have to do is cut a couple dual meets. There's dual meets towards the end of the year. You got to cut a couple of them. And my solution is you give some points to the NCAA tournament to the winner of this tournament, right? Hey, Penn State, Iowa, you win this tournament, you get 10 points. People aren't going to sit out and say, I'm going to let Penn State go 10 points above me. That's not going to happen. So you need to make the rules. You can't have the inmates running the asylum. You need to make the rules what is good for wrestling. I'm going to leave it at that. Hey, great show, Winnock. We'll chat later. We're going to get Coach Goodale on next time. I hear that music. Make sure you follow us. Spotify, anywhere you listen to your podcast, YouTube, we are on there. Get us on the Instagram, get us on the Facebook, give us a follow. We'll be back and relentless pursuit, baby.